tablet. Just so you know, this is a little bit easier on a desktop or on a laptop, but you certainly can follow along if you're on a tablet. And we'll have the link to the slides. You're going to want these slides, but we're gonna get right started. So we're gonna introduce ourselves. Thank you for being with us. My name is Laurel Kirchhoff, and I'm the Digital Learning Project Specialist at San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools in Southern California. And with me, Sonal, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Sonal Patel. I always tell people, rhyme it with Ronald, take the D off the end and you get Sonal. Originally British, I'm the Digital Learning and Innovation Coordinator at San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, and I will be your chat moderator today. So Laurel's going to be doing most of the talking and I'll chime in whenever necessary, but happy to be here with you all today. Thank you.
And just to give you a little bit of background about both of us, we were both previously educators. I was in the classroom for 20 years, and I taught middle school. Middle school was my jam. Sonal, do you want to talk about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've taught from like all grade levels from K through 8th grade. And I was an instructional coach for 4 years for English literacy, language arts, and educational technology before I came to the county.
So we're both going to give you a lot of hands-on tools and examples today. And so this is definitely not going to be a sit and get. So we hope that you are ready and excited, and we're going to dig in. This is going to be a blend of lesson design and also some ed tech tools. So Sonal and I both were instructional coaches and we were ed tech coaches, but now in our capacity at the county office, we are digital learning specialists. So this is what we're working with today. So these are our learning targets, just giving you some objectives. One of the things you're gonna see and notice today is we probably are going to have way more material than we're going to be able to cover. And so just know that if we don't get through everything, you have the slide deck, please go through it. All of the materials are yours to use. We are going to be using the Google Universe today, but the idea is that we wanted to give you a lot of takeaways. So we're going to be focusing on understanding by design as our model for lesson planning, and we want to show you some things. If you're not familiar with the National Quality Online Learning Standards, we're going to really spend a little bit of time there, dig in, and show you how you can use this online space and these standards to help you with your lesson planning. And you will hopefully walk away with a complete lesson plan. So we have a few norms that we always start off all of our webinars, and we've done quite a bit of this over the last few months. We've done a lot of webinars, but thanks for muting your mic if you're not speaking. It just makes it a little bit easier for us. Please, if you have questions, use the chat. Gabe is in the chat, Sonal's in the chat, and we know that we're all better together. Please feel free to chime in and answer each other's questions. And we will definitely, Sonal and Gabe will stop me if there's something I can answer right there. But I will definitely be sticking around afterwards for a Q&A session if you have anything you want to specifically address. And then just as always, we appreciate meeting etiquette. If your camera's on, awesome, but just remember your camera's on. If you want to turn it off and you feel more comfortable that way, that's okay too. But sometimes we just forget when we're in the online space that we're still, have that etiquette. So thank you. All right, so again, this is a little bit longer. It's not an hour. We're here for an hour and a half. If you have any needs that you need to take care of, please feel free to do that. This is going to be really participatory. So you're going to have some time where I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do something. You're going to do it and then come on back. So it's going to be very interactive that way. Kind of think of the I do, we do, and then you do model. And I did, with all of the documents, create a forced copy for you so that way you actually have your own copy. I recommend saving those so you have a master and then you can go back and use it anytime you want. So we're going to start off with a little icebreaker. And the thing about icebreakers, I know you love them, you hate them, whatever. I hate them, actually. I'll take that back. I've come to love them. But there's a lot that we want to talk about, and we're going to be modeling throughout this. Why do we start with an icebreaker? Well, I have a little quote from Shakespeare on there. This is not a new concept, but the idea of icebreakers is really to build community and to get to know each other and to have a little bit of interaction in a way that can help us to have empathy for each other. We can also do skill acquisition. So what we'd like you to do is go to menti.com, and you can do this on your phone if you so desire, and enter this code 696569 and just answer this question. If you could only drive one car for the rest of your life, like think about it, one car, what would it be? And if you're not familiar with Menti, there's a lot you can do there, and it is free. So I'm going to take you guys to the results, and let's see what kind of cars you would drive for the rest of your life. Of course, my computer is running really slow. A motorhome. Love it.
I didn't expect that one. That was a good one.
Oh, a GT Mustang. Oh, that's awesome. Denali Explorer. That's pretty clever.
What about you, Laurel? What's the one car that you wish you could drive for the rest of your life?
I remember build. I'm a fan of muscle cars. Like I like really fast, and like I like the sound. I don't know. Probably right. I'm really into the new Mustangs right now. In fact, I saw one on the street, but I think I'd probably get a vintage one and then work on the engine and like overhaul it, make it really fast. But it's not very.
I'm still thinking about mine. I'm stumbled by the rest of your life question, because right now I really want a Tesla, but I don't know whether I want to drive that for the rest of my life. I think I want the most techie car for the rest of my life, because technology is always updating. So yeah.
I thought I wanted a Tesla, but
No,
I've changed my mind.
we could talk about the pros and cons later.
Ooh, an Aston Martin.
Ooh.
Yeah, whoever, but that's Aston Martin. Yeah, I could do that. I was thinking like a Shelby, like a Mustang Shelby, and then like just overhauling it. But a motorhome is smart. All right, we'll give this another minute. If you've never used Mentimeter before, it's really fun. It's really easy, and then we can actually have these conversations. And James Bond car, that would be really cool. And you can see how many people have participated, and you can do all sorts of different features, which we'll talk about later. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to the presentation. Thank you for everybody that participated. What I'd like you to do right now, and this is a really important part of this presentation, I want you just to take a minute and really think about your favorite lesson, your most favorite lesson you've ever taught. It could be because of the content. It could be because it just goes, every time you do it, it's a hit. You're like, yes, love it. This works. Just think about your favorite lesson. What makes this an excellent lesson? Why do your students love it? Because we know that that's a piece of it. When your kids love the lesson, you're like, yes. What's the hook? What's the draw? And what I'd like you to do is go to this Padlet, and you can click on this link. That's right here. And just add it to this Padlet, and just really think about this. And I'm going to give you, it says 10 minutes, but I might truncate that a little bit, and I start talking about it in about 6 or 7 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and just have you think about it and start adding this to the Padlet. And if you're not familiar with Padlet, I'm going to go there right now. Now remember, you're not putting your whole lesson plan on here. I have some that are on here that are not history related, but I want you just to kind of see the idea. If you click on the plus, you can add your favorite lesson, but think about it. Why was it your fave? What elements made it work, and why your students loved it? So I'm going to give you a little bit of time. I'm going to set my timer, and I'm not going to talk during this time, but we will be in the chat. So And once you've added yours, feel free to read through the other ones. You can I don't believe that the comments are turned on for this Padlet, but feel free to read through them and see if anything gives you ideas. Again, this is about building community, but it's also a way that we can, teacher share teacher, but gain ideas and really collaborate. It's great collaboration. Okay, we've got 2 more minutes, and then we're gonna talk about this and kind of go into the activity. This part is really, really important because you're gonna be coming back to this lesson or an idea that you have with your favorite lesson. Okay, about 1 more minute left here. I'm looking through all these amazing lessons. Oh, that's my timer. There we go. Yes, I have a Harry Potter timer. So this in the chat, if you can put down if you're familiar with Padlet or not, so that way I know if I need to give you a little back channel. If you're not familiar with it, don't worry, I can walk you through. But If you could just put in the chat really fast, if you've used Padlet before, you're familiar. Let's take a look really fast. Yes. So it looks like most people are. If you're not familiar with it, at the end during the Q&A, if you want to stick around, we can take a look and I can show you some cool features. But I do love Padlet as well. And it's, like I said, it's a great way to have collaboration. It's a great way to build community. You can use it in lots of different styles. And looks like people are really love using it. So the idea here was really to think about your own practice, really think about your own lesson, and think about what worked for you, whether it was in the face-to-face. I saw some really innovative things like the AR with the Alamo and ways we could incorporate tech. But I want you to think about this. Student engagement in the online world. We really have to bridge that gap because in person, I know that I'm a great storyteller. Like that's one of my strengths as a teacher. I have lots of weaknesses, but as a teacher, I could always get the story going with my students. And so I could have a funny meme or I could make something and just throw it up and be like, okay, it's going to be story time with Mrs. Kirchhoff. And my class is like, oh, story time with Mrs. Kirchhoff. And I just knew that I could walk around the room and get them engaged and really do a lot of things with them that in the online space was very difficult for me. And last year I was about half in and half out of the classroom. It was, I was spending a lot of time at the district office. And so how can you take this lesson that you love, that you know works super well, and recreate it in this blended or virtual space? So the first thing I want to talk to you about though, before we get into the lesson, is thinking about your virtual classroom, because that is where the setup is really going to get the basis, the foundation for everything that you're going to be doing with your lesson planning. So some things to consider. Now, if you're not a classroom teacher, this can still work if you're doing professional development or things like that. But when you're thinking holistically and you're thinking about an online or a blended classroom, there's a couple of things that are really, really important. Now, we know relationships are important, whether you're in a face-to-face classroom or not. But being able to create relationships in an online space and really have that foundation for your classroom is important. But it's also important with your colleagues. It can be isolating being a teacher, right? We're the kings and queens of our own domain, our own classroom. It can be even more isolating when we're not actually in a building together. And then with all of the restrictions, depending on what state you're in, how things are going to look in the fall, a lot of people still don't even know. So really having that, that communication with your colleagues is important as well. Also consider that maybe you're not going to be able to take this lesson and exactly transfer it into the online space, but you have the opportunity to really be creative and innovative in ways that maybe you wouldn't have done if we weren't forced into this situation. And there's a few other things on here. This is one of the things you should know about me. I'm not gonna read the slide word for word to you, but I am gonna reference a lot of things on here. Something else I want to point out, and this is where I struggled, and I still do to some extent. I don't mind being vulnerable in this space, but really trying to be flexible and asking your students for feedback, especially when we're talking about what works and what doesn't in a blended or online classroom. Sometimes it can be scary to ask our students, but if I learned anything from being an 8th grade teacher for 20 years, my students will be brutally honest with me in a way that I would appreciate and also not appreciate at the same time. So getting feedback from them on what's working and what's helping, and actually bringing them into that whole cycle of learning is really important. Sonal, is there anything from this slide that you want to talk about a little bit more?
I just wanted to reference a little bit more the synchronous versus asynchronous and the importance of ensuring that we're meeting the needs of all of our students, right? Because some students are not going to be able to access your synchronous meetings. So just consider that when you're providing options for your lessons and your activities.
Absolutely.
Thanks, all.
All right, moving on. Here are some more specific lesson plan design considerations. And again, I'm not going to read this slide to you. I'm actually going to give you about 30 seconds to look over this, and then I'm going to hit some highlights. So I'm going to just have you take a look at it. all be quiet and then we'll talk. So let's see what you think. Thirty seconds of quiet is a long time in the online space. So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, just anything that really stands out to you from this slide, if you can add it into the chat, we'd love doing that. Sonal's gonna read a few of those out.
Someone put chunking here, chunking your material. I think that's important rather than throwing great bits of, lots of information at students. And also, like, just adding to that, just being really clear on what your objectives are, and not just giving busy work for the sake of giving busy work. And then, Gabriel, you're giving some really great suggestions here, starting web meetings with a funny joke, quote, or poll, just to kind of build that community connection. Clear directions, absolutely. And just different ways of giving directions through video, through written text. We just need to be aware of the multiple ways we can do that online.
Yeah, and I'm going to give some examples of vertical versus horizontal as well.
Awesome. We've got short directions here by Carolee. Thank you for that. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through this again. I'm not going to read these, but I am going to hit some highlights from each of them. So when we're talking about those clear directions, and I think this is where we can also keep that confusion. If we give written directions, I know when I would give my directions to my class, I would explain things that maybe I didn't have typed out or nuances, but plus that your students like hearing your voice, they like seeing you. And so having verbally communicated directions, whether you're recording your PowerPoint or you do a quick screencast, those are also ways to build community, and also ways that you can really make sure your directions are clear. And you can stop yourself from getting those hundreds of emails for clarity. If you're using Google Classroom or whatever LMS you're using, just post your directions and then they're there. The students can go back and reference them. I saw a meme on Facebook that was going around probably about 7 weeks ago about, our kids can use Snapchat, but they can't log into Google Classroom. And while it was a funny meme, I really caution people too, because there's a lot on the line for our students, right? Especially if the grades were counting in this space. And so learning a web tool and how to use it appropriately in an online space and how you expect them to use it, they're learning the content, but they're also learning what your expectations are for that web tool as well. And so making sure that you're really clear, again, I can't stress it enough, having directions on how to use the web tool will also save you tons and tons and tons of grief. Being clear on your objectives. I know I had to really pare down my lessons and really look at my standards, really look at my objectives and see what do my students absolutely have to retain from this lesson, so that way I could keep it short, I could chunk it, and I could make it really relevant for their learning. And then when we're talking about vertically versus horizontally, when I think horizontal, I think of like a 5-day week. Like on Monday, we're going to do this, and on Tuesday, we're going to do this, and on Wednesday, I'm going to check for understanding, and so on and so forth. But in the online blended classroom, we don't have to think Monday through Friday anymore. We really can design lessons that are, maybe it takes a week and a half, or maybe the student can work at their own pace. Or maybe we can do something like a hyperdoc where we can make it very interactive and have some expectations set in different ways that we're going to work with our students. So we don't have to consider, oh, I only have a 50-minute period to work with these kids on this. Now, I can work with them, or they can work on it as long as they need in a way that's going to be meaningful. And of course, we have to have a pace, but we can actually have a feedback loop and include them. So just some considerations there. I want to now stop talking and get you looking at some more materials. And I think that this is a really good place. In the chat, if you're familiar with NSQOL, National Standards for Quality Online Learning, can you put that in the chat just so we can see if anyone's familiar with these? They're formerly the NSQOL Standards. Is anybody familiar? Sonal, seen anybody? Not? You're not, don't worry. They're
yes or no, yeah.
You're gonna love them.
No, I've not got anyone that's familiar so far, except for one who is somewhat familiar.
Okay. So
Getting a lot of no's, so I would go into a little detail with this one.
Perfect. Well, I'll click on this link and show you around a little bit. So these, like I said, are based off of, they were formerly the NSQOL standards. And they're linked into these slides, and you're gonna want to go here. Of course, it's gonna take me a second. Here we go. So the National Standards for Quality Online Learning are similar in the fact to ISTE standards and NSQOL standards in that they're non-evaluative and there's something to work toward. They're guideposts, if you will, on how we can do online or blended learning. So the link will take you here, and you can go here to the standards. There's actually 3 sets of standards. And Sonal and I were introduced to these, and we now use them in all of our work, all of our trainings, because we believe in them, and you're going to see why. So they have online teaching programs and then courses. We're going to look at teaching, and if you see here, we're going to look at Standard C, instructional design, and I'm going to show you that in a second. So if I go here to the standards, and in fact, I think that's under online courses. Yes, it is. So when I click here on the standard, it talks to you about what the standard is, and then it has these indicators that actually go into more detail. Now, the thing that sets NSQOL apart, and you're gonna have some time to actually look at these, is for every indicator, they also have an explanation and a real life example. So these were written by educators for educators. So if you look at C1, it says the online course design includes activities that guide the learners towards promoting ownership of their learning and self-monitoring. That's great, right? That's a great standard. We all want that. We all want our students to have ownership of their learning and monitor their learning. But what does that actually look like? So then they actually provide the explanation and then some real examples for you. So what we would love for you to do right now is for you to click on the link, go to the standards, go to quality online courses, and then click on Standard C, and just take a couple of minutes to go through and really read through them. And then in the chat, it's right here, just answer these 2 questions. How could these national standards help you design online lessons, and what was an aha moment that you had? So I'll set my timer for 10 minutes, so I won't talk during that time, but I want you to have time to actually check it out. So there, and I know Sonal probably already did this, but she'll put the link in the chat to NSQOL as well.
I was just about to, yeah.
Oh. All right, so yeah, check it out. I hope this will be helpful for you. We'll take about 10 minutes. Actually, I think we're gonna do 7 because
no problem. And just remember, everyone, these are meant as guidelines. They're not, they can be used as flexibly as you want, but it just helps us to understand what is expected of the online learning setting. I just added it to the chat window.
We have about 2.5 more minutes to check this out. And I'm loving the answers in the chat. So thoughtful, like blown away. Great insights. Here we go. So I'm reading through the chat as we're going through here, and yes, I think the biggest thing, and Carolee, I'm glad that you put that in there. If if you don't know about these standards, if you don't know that they're out there, we don't have to just work off our instincts. We can actually look and see and give us some guidance, which I know a lot of people were kind of thrown into this distance learning in it. I really encourage you, I really do, to check these out and to go through the quality online teaching. I think the other thing that to really think about here is you're probably doing a lot of these things already. And it does provide some validation as that you're on the right path. You're doing all of the things that you can be doing, or conversely, I never thought of that. Maybe, I've in my face-to-face classroom, I did it this way, but I could do it this way, because they have those examples and exemplars there for you. So really check them out, and use it. But I'm going to keep moving on because there is more. We have so much to cover today. So hopefully those are helpful for you. I do want to play a little game. For those of you that are not familiar with quizzes, we love quizzes. And in fact, I'm going to go out of my full screen here. We're going to play a little game just to have a little bit of fun, also to break it up. So what I'd like you to do is go to joinmyquiz.com. And we are going to play a live game. Now, if you're not familiar with quizzes, if you're a Kahooter, that's fine. This is just gamification of learning, so you can use this for formative or summative assessments. But we're going to play a live game. I'm actually going to have you do a team game, and I'm going to, yeah, this is going to be good. So I'm going to pick team. So go to joinmyquiz.com, and you're going to enter this game code, 203380. Okay. And this is going to auto-generate names for you, so you're not going to actually be able to see your name here. Now we're going to have Boysenberry Othello, Flax Fox, Chili Reed, Parsley Prin. And you can have your real names on here as well, but I think it's kind of fun to have the quizzes names. So we'll wait a couple more minutes, get everybody in here. Pomegranate Pan. The only thing about quizzes is once I do start the game, you won't be able to join. So if you can get in there, awesome.
I added the link to chat as well for anyone that needs it.
Thank you. I didn't even say that because I knew you would do it, Sonal. So thank you. Oh no, I'm a vegan. Vegan sharks. I know, that's one of my favorite ones. All right, we're gonna start this game. Are you ready? Got a couple more people coming in. Yeah, once I start it, you won't be able to join. So I apologize if you're not there. So we're gonna play. Ready? Go. And as much as I love the music, I'm gonna turn it off. Oh, vegan sharks are in the lead. No more. Sorry. Sorry, Gabe. All right, Grumpy Monkeys are in the lead now. Tie-dye pandas are coming up. Come on, tiny whales. You can do it. You can do it. Oh, come on, Grumpy. Oh, we're going back and forth. It's getting close. Oh, comeback story. Vegan sharks. They're making a comeback. I guess not for long. Tiny whales, you can do it. You can do it, tiny whales. All right, we are going to end this game because it's just a little bit of fun. It looks like everyone's finishing up. If you are not familiar with quizzes, I highly recommend you check it out. It's free and it works and plays very nicely if you're in the Google universe. But the other parts about there's like so much you can do here, but I'm gonna go ahead and end our game. So here we are. We have our winners. Third place, Vegan Sharks. Second, Grumpy Monkeys. And of course our winner, the Tie-Dye Pandas. There's a lot you can get in here if you are familiar with quizzes. Awesome. If you're not, I have a link in the resources. There's a lot of back-end information you can get here, and they continually refresh this. You can get your class accuracy, what the toughest question was, the longest question that people had to really think about. I can look at it this way as well. Go, ooh, question 3, I really needed to maybe look at this. Blank building is very important. Maybe that was too open-ended. Maybe I needed to rethink that. So there's lots you can do here. I'm not going to walk you through all of this, but it is a lot of fun. It's a great way, and you can play it lots of different ways. You can do this synchronously like we just did, or you can do it asynchronously where you also just assign it. You can do it as a homework assignment. quote unquote homework. So there's lots that you can do with this, but just a little bit of fun also. So we're going to jump right here into this reflection piece. So we're going to think about your online classroom now a little bit more in your own lessons. What I'm going to have you do is go to this checklist and just do a little reflection on your own practice. This is going to be really quick, about 5 minutes. You're going to open up the checklist. It's going to ask you to make a copy. You'll see it's going to look like this. All of these are doing forced copies, so that way we can keep our master, but you also get a copy automatically put in your Google Drive. So when you open it up, this is just thinking about those online design considerations that we talked about before, and you're going to look at your own practice. Now, you might be, do your online lessons have clear directions, both written and verbally? If that answer is yes, you can put a check mark there. If it's no, no, we'll never know. This is yours. If it's somewhere in between, again, we'll never know. But on the right-hand side, I put some suggestions for some ed tech tools, some possible ones that you might be able to use to help you in that practice. So giving you some ideas on how you can do this in your online space. Again, always ask before you app when you're talking about what has been, you know, quote unquote whitelisted by your IT department for student data privacy reasons. So just make sure you're aware of that. But I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. So make yourself a copy, go through this checklist and see where you're at. Okay, we have about 30 more seconds. All right, there's our timer. So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, just put one thing that was like an aha moment for you from this checklist. Anything that stood out to you or you found particularly helpful, or a suggestion, just anything at all, just a little reflection on our reflection. So we'll put that in the chat. I think one of the things I would really love to emphasize here is that you don't have to do all of this at once. I am sure, I'm 100% positive that you have areas of strength on this checklist. And then there are always areas of improvement, right? Always. So and not to get overwhelmed, just pick one area that you really want to focus on and you really want to improve on that aspect and work on that. And then be like, okay, hey, I'm doing really well here. Let's pick another one and move forward. You don't have to do it all at once. There's so much out there, and because you're even trying to improve your practice, that puts you ahead of the game as well, and your students are going to benefit just because you have that intention. So we're going to move on. Is there anything, Sonal, that you want to point out here before we move on to our next section, or anything that?
Everything. I think somebody earlier on mentioned having a checklist based on the NSQOL standards. So this is a really great start in designing your lessons.
I think that NSQOL gets just like, it gets a little overwhelming because there is so much of it. So I recommend, using it as a guideline, and definitely refer back to it and maybe start here and see how you can supplement it as well, especially with those exemplars that they give. Coming back to our slides though, I'm going to move on here. Let me get back into presentation mode. So now you've done a little bit of reflection on your practice. Let's talk about your actual lessons. And I know it's kind of, we're getting there, like the little engine that could, we're getting there. So what we want to do is really think about how we can design these lessons, how we can be creative, how we can harness all of this wonderful knowledge that we have as educators. And then the most important part is really streamlining it for this online space. So we want to start, and I love the Understanding by Design framework. If you're not familiar with it, it's from Vanderbilt University. It's linked into the resources at the end. But we really want to begin with the end in mind. So those desired results. Now, again, there's a lot of text on this slide, but it's so important. I really couldn't find a way to pare it down in a way that I want you to be able to go back to it. So we want to start with our results. That's stage one. What should your students hear, read, explore? The second question I think is really important. What knowledge or skills do your students have to have going into this in order to master this and participate? What barriers are they going to face going into this learning? Is it something that they need a printer for? Maybe they don't have a printer, or maybe they need a basic knowledge of geography. I know my 8th graders, whatever geography they had learned previously to coming into my class, somehow they just completely forgot it and they didn't know where North America was. And I'm like, okay, place to start, right? And then the other big ideas that they absolutely need to retain. What is the point? Why is this learning so important that they have to learn it now in the online space? What's the point? Do they need to know every single detail of the War of 1812? I would counter, no. Do I like to teach the War of 1812? Yes, I absolutely love to. But do they need to know every single battle and every single sequence? Probably not, right? No, they really don't. The second stage after you've gone through this, is determining what's going to be your evidence. How do you know your students are going to be successful? How do you know that they have achieved that proficiency and understanding? And those are going to be your formative and summative assessments going forward. So you are really working backwards. And we're going to practice this, so don't worry. I got more checklists for you. After we do stage 1 and 2, then we can actually start thinking about the lesson itself. Because once we've identified, especially for the online space, what they absolutely have to know, what they need to retain, what barriers they're going to have to their learning, then we can decide and what our evidence is going to be. So you're going to click on this template. Ooh, I don't know if this, I guess this one wasn't forcing a copy. So you might want to make a copy. So go File, make a copy. And this is going to actually walk you through it. So you're going to think about that favorite lesson that you were thinking about earlier. And I just created this little template that you can use. So identify your results. So think about your lesson. What are these, what are barriers that the students might have? Prior knowledge, big ideas, and you can type right into this. I highly recommend making a copy, save a master copy so you can go back to this over and over again. And take a look. Now, Sonal and I have both put in some examples for you, and you can see this right here. We have an elementary example. I believe this isn't ELA anymore though, is it, Sonal?
Oh, no, it is still ELA, but it's related to social science content, yeah.
Yeah, for those of you that are using Common Core, I know the Common Core state standards interweave with our history, social science. So just to show you what this is going to look like, we made a secondary and an elementary example. You can look at the examples and see how this would look in real time. So this is one that I filled out for 8th grade, and then I just kind of, you can go through it at your leisure. So we are going to give you about 10 minutes to get the template, look at the samples. If you don't if you don't have time to fill it out completely, don't worry about it. The most important thing here is that you look at the form, you think about this lesson design process, look at this, review the samples and really start to dig in. So I'm gonna put 10 minutes on the timer and let you go ahead and get started. And I'm gonna jump into the chat if anybody gets stuck or needs help or just wants to chat. All right, there's our timer. Awesome. So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, just something that stood out to you from this, or a question that you have, an aha moment, um, thoughts on butterbeer, whatever it is that you want to add. But just, I'd really love to create some dialogue about this. What are you thinking about understanding by design, or the samples, or just anything that really resonated with you? I agree, Carolee. I think butterbeer is too sweet, even the cold one. So something that resonated with you from stage 1 and stage 2, the forms, anything at all. Give you a second to chime in. I see Sonal nodding. I agree. It does take time. It does take a lot of time. I think when we talk about online teaching, there's a lot of misconceptions on, oh, we're just going to throw everything online. And unfortunately, that's not the case. But the good part is once you actually start it and do it, it does become easier. It does get faster. Understanding by design is not something that's new, that's just for the online space. But and of course, us trying to cover this in an hour and a half is just really not doing it any justice either. And I see some being intentional with what we teach. Absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing. And I want to just kind of go back really quickly before we get into the lesson planning magically. This idea here, what are these big ideas that you absolutely need your students to retain? That's what we need to focus on in teaching in this online and blended space. So we're going to move on. Just for the sake of time, we're going to get into this lesson planning magic. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to spend too much time here because you do have this link, but I do want to get you into that, our final phase. So this is stage 3. After you do the backwards design, you think about your main ideas, being very intentional, looking at your evidence of success, your success criteria. Now you can actually start planning out the lesson. So this little template here just kind of walks you through thinking about how you're going to do this. And when we talked about planning vertically instead of horizontally, again, this is a horizontal chart, but you get the idea. So you could kind of, what do my students need to know before? What activities do I want to do? Maybe this is where you want to really get into, I want to do a Socratic seminar. I want to do philosophical chairs. How can I do that online? What absolutely has to be explained by you? That there could be misconceptions out there. What really needs to be coached or taught? There was a lot of things I would definitely not want someone else to explain to my students, that I thought that I was the best person to explain it to them. There was a way that I needed them to understand it, but I also knew there was a lot of quote unquote fake news out there that I didn't think my students would really understand, so it needed to come from me. And I put that burden on myself, which was good. And then also what materials and resources are best used. Remember, not everything has to be online just because you're teaching online. I didn't generally teach from my textbook because our history textbooks were from the late 90s and weren't really that robust. But there were a couple sections that were great, and that they also had some charts and some graphics that were really wonderful, and especially when it came to geography. And I didn't need to reinvent the wheel. I could have my students use that resource, and I knew that they had it at their home. So you can go. You have this here, this lesson magic stage 3, that you can use at your own leisure and go through once you kind of decide. So your plan, you have it here. Your plan goes down at the bottom, and then you can just use this to help yourself. Your lesson plan name, your objective, and then some time considerations. Really consider your time. And remember, it doesn't have to be Monday through Friday, but think holistically. How much time do you really have with your students during that week? How much time is this really going to take them, not how much time it took you? And what are the non-negotiables? So if I had a sync session where my students absolutely, if they can't make this, they have to watch this video, make it really clear to your students what are the non-negotiables. You have to have this in order to go through with your learning. So this is just a resource for you to use. Again, for the sake of time, because we only have, if you can believe it, about 15 more minutes. I can't, it's already gone by so fast. I do want to take you into this last section, and this is where we're going to spend the next little bit of time. We always run out of time, I apologize, but we wanted you to be able to take your lesson and actually put it into a choice board, and how you could actually create a week's worth of lesson at the choice board. So I made this template for you, and it's a Google Slides template. I'm going to open it up. And this is based off of Roger Bybee's 5E model. If you're not familiar with it, you can go through. And this is where you can actually start creating and building out that lesson. So thinking of your favorite lesson. So on this first, and this isn't pretty, like this is not packaged very, like it's not cute. Let's call it what it is. You can go in and prettify it and make it all cutesy and add all whatever you want. This is all about the pedagogy, so sorry, it's not cute. So this is your home page, if you will, and all of these are linked in. So you have your directions page, and you can go in and type this. This is your own copy. If you want to make a master copy, this is for you. Have the detailed directions for your students. Think about the time, the requirements, what's a must-do versus a choice, your learning targets, success criteria, all of the things your students need to know for this lesson. And a big one is what to do if. So trying to triage and answer all of those questions ahead of time that you know they're going to have, like, when is this due? How do I turn it in? I don't know how to do this. Maybe you have a screencast that you made that you answer all of their questions and you walk them through the process. I don't know. So then for each of these sections, you're engage, explore, explain, and elaborate. You can go in and edit all of this. You can delete it if you want. So you add your directions in. Here's some ideas from Catlin Tucker and Roger Bybee on engaging, and then some further considerations for you. Again, what barriers are there to learning, prior knowledge, tools, how and when is this, all of those good things. Same thing for explore, and I put EdTech tools on here that you could use as well to help you. Explain, elaborate, and last but not least, their success criteria or evidence of learning. And on each of these, you'll notice I have a return to the homepage button. So as a student is going through this, they can go back to that homepage, which is your choice board template. You can notice, I don't know if you noticed, but I did have a hint on here. I did color coordinate these. So the engage box is blue and the engage page is blue. Things like that do help with accessibilities for our students. We want to make sure that we're making this really easy for access for all of our students, and they're learning little tips and tricks there. So we only have about 10 minutes left in this session, but I want to give you time to really get started, just to take a look at it. If you're feeling overwhelmed, I apologize. But just know that this is here for you to go back to and for you to check it out. So we have an elementary sample, a secondary sample, and then I did also create, if you don't like the PowerPoint or the slide version, sorry, we've been living in a Microsoft universe as well, I made a simplified just one page doc that you can use as well. So you can go in and type away, check it out, all of that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to give you some time for that to work, and then in about 8 minutes-ish, we'll wrap up, and you can leave with all of these takeaways that you can use at your leisure to help you with your lesson planning. And my goal was for you to at least get the materials today and be able to follow up with me later. And yeah, so I'm going to be quiet and let you work. And if there's questions, I will jump into the chat. have about 2 more minutes. If anything stood out to you, or I don't want to cut you off too soon, but there's any questions you have or something that stood out or clarifications, again, we are, that kind of goes on to the next slide. I know we're wrapping up. We would love to hear your takeaways from today, things that we could do to improve this. I know it was fast. Follow us on Twitter. Sonal and I live in the Twitterverse, right, Gabe? And but I'm going to be sticking around. So if you want to, turn on your mic and ask a question, I know Sonal does have to jump off pretty fast, but I will stay here for at least 10 minutes. Okay, Gabe, if we stay around. All right, cool.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. It's been really great being here. Laurel loves to help the social science history cause, so she always pulls me along, but I always feel thankful after I've done that. I mean, after I've been through the experience, because you guys are awesome. So hope to see you soon, and good luck with all of this, and we're here to help you at any time. Thanks, Laurel and Gabriel. See you soon.
Bye, Sonal.